What would you do if the person you loved most stood between you and everything you wanted? In the heart of a medieval kingdom, a king lies dead in his royal chamber, a dagger through his heart. The captain of his personal guard is found beside the bed, hands bloody, drunk and unconscious. To everyone in the castle, it's an obvious case of betrayal, a trusted protector who turned killer. But the real killers are watching from the shadows, holding hands, sharing secret smiles as an innocent man is dragged away in chains. The Queen and the king's younger brother didn't just murder a king, they murdered the one person who stood between their forbidden love and ultimate power. Now, with the traitor captain about to be executed, they're free to rule together as regent and grieving widow. But here's what they didn't count on. Murder changes you. The very crime that brought them together is about to tear them apart. Because when you cross the line from lovers to killers, every kiss tastes like blood, every touch feels like betrayal. And when paranoia sets in, when every shadow seems to hide a witness, when the guilt starts eating them alive, they'll discover that their first murder won't be their last. Because some secrets are worth killing for, and some secrets are worth killing anyone who discovers them. This is the royal bedchamber betrayal, where love becomes murder and murder becomes madness. Stay to discover if passion can survive the weight of an innocent man's blood, and whether killers can ever truly trust each other. The scream that echoes through the castle corridors at dawn belongs to Dame Margaret, the Queen's lady-in-waiting. She's found the king's body, and her horrified cries bring guards running from every direction. By the time the castle is fully awake, the scene is set perfectly. King Edward lies sprawled across his bed, the royal dagger buried deep in his chest. Blood has soaked through the silk sheets, pooling on the stone floor. Captain William of the Guard is slumped in a chair beside the bed, unconscious, his hands and tunic stained crimson. An empty wine bottle lies shattered at his feet. Sir Marcus, the king's chief advisor, takes charge immediately. Seal the chamber. No one else enters. But two people are already inside, having rushed to the scene like everyone else. Queen Isabella kneels beside her husband's body, her performance of grief flawless. Tears stream down her face as she cradles the king's cold hand. "My lord, my beloved," she whispers. Prince Richard, the king's younger brother, stands behind her, his face a mask of shock and rage. "William," he growls, looking at the unconscious captain, "I trusted him with my brother's life." The captain stirs, blinking in confusion. When he sees the blood on his hands, his face goes white. What happened? Where am I?" "You tell us," Sir Marcus snaps. "We found you here with the king's blood on your hands." William looks around frantically. "I don't remember. I was on guard duty and then nothing. I swear on my life I would never harm His Majesty." But his protests fall on deaf ears. The evidence is overwhelming. He's literally caught red-handed. Queen Isabella rises slowly, her voice trembling with perfectly acted emotion. "Take him away. I cannot bear to look at him." As guards drag the protesting William from the chamber, Prince Richard places a comforting hand on the Queen's shoulder. The touch lingers just a moment too long, but in the chaos, no one notices. "Sister," he says formally, "the kingdom needs leadership in this dark hour. As the king's brother and closest male relative, I will serve as regent until proper arrangements can be made." She nods, leaning into his strength. "The realm is fortunate to have you, Richard." Their eyes meet for just an instant, a flash of triumph, of shared secret, of passion barely contained. Then they remember their audience and compose themselves. Sir Marcus bows. "Your Highness, shall I summon the executioner? The captain's crime is clear." "Justice will be swift," Richard declares. "But first, let him confess publicly. The people need to see that even the king's most trusted protector cannot escape justice for regicide." As the room empties, leaving only the dead king, the Queen and Richard exchange one more glance. Their plan worked perfectly. William will die for their crime, and they'll rule together as they always dreamed. But in the shadows of the chamber, Neither notices the small piece of torn fabric caught on the window latch, fabric that doesn't match anything William was wearing. In the castle dungeons, Captain William sits chained to the wall, his head pounding from whatever drug they used to knock him unconscious. He remembers fragments, being on guard duty, accepting a cup of wine from someone, then nothing, until he woke up covered in the king's blood. Above him in the great hall, Prince Richard addresses the assembled lords and nobles. Queen Isabella sits beside him, dressed in mourning black, her face a portrait of grief. "My lords," Richard announces, "the evidence against Captain William is overwhelming, but before his execution we must understand how this betrayal happened." Lord Aldwyn, an elderly nobleman, stands. "Your Highness, William served the crown faithfully for 15 years. This seems sudden." Richard's jaw tightens slightly. "Are you suggesting the evidence lies? Not the evidence, but perhaps circumstances we don't understand." The Queen speaks for the first time, her voice weak with sorrow. "My lords, I know this is difficult to accept. William was like family to us, but the facts cannot be denied." In the dungeons, the torturer arrives. William looks up as the man enters with his tools. "Please," William begs. "I served the king loyally. Someone drugged me, set me up. You have to believe me." The torturer, a scarred man named Bruno, pauses. "I've been doing this for 20 years, Captain. Guilty men usually confess immediately to stop the pain. Innocent men," he shrugs, "they scream the same truths over and over." "Then you know I'm innocent." Bruno selects a heated iron. "Doesn't matter what I know, only matters what Prince Richard wants to hear." Back in the royal chambers, Queen Isabella and Richard finally have a moment alone. The servants have been dismissed, the guards posted outside. "It's working perfectly," Richard whispers, pulling her into his arms. "William's stubbornness troubles me," she replies. "He's not confessing." "He will. Bruno knows how to break anyone." They kiss passionately, the first time they can embrace freely since the murder. But even in their moment of triumph, something feels different. "Richard," she says, pulling back, "there was so much blood." "You're having second thoughts?" "No, just when I held Edward's hand this morning, it was so cold, so final." Richard's eyes harden. "Edward was weak. The kingdom was stagnating under his rule. We did what was necessary." But Isabella shivers. "I keep seeing his face when the dagger went in, the surprise, the betrayal. He was asleep. He felt nothing. But I felt everything." Their romantic moment is interrupted by a knock. Sir Marcus enters with disturbing news. "Your Highnesses, we have a problem. Young Lord Thomas claims he saw someone leaving the king's chamber around midnight. Someone other than Captain William." Richard and Isabella exchange alarmed glances. "Who?" Richard demands. He couldn't see clearly in the darkness, but he insists the figure was too tall to be William and moved differently. Isabella's voice is carefully controlled. "The boy was probably dreaming. Grief can cause hallucinations. Perhaps. But he's requesting an audience to share what he saw." Richard makes a quick decision. "Bring him here immediately. If there's any truth to his claims, we need to know." After Marcus leaves, Isabella grabs Richard's arm. "What if he saw one of us?" Then Lord Thomas just became our second problem. Through the window, they can hear William's screams echoing from the dungeons. The innocent man is being tortured for their crime, and now a witness threatens to unravel everything. Their perfect plan is about to become a perfect nightmare. Lord Thomas is barely 18, nervous and pale as he's escorted into the royal chamber. Richard and Isabella watch him carefully, their faces masks of composed authority. "Lord Thomas," Richard says gently, "Sir Marcus tells us you saw something last night. Please, speak freely." The young man wrings his hands. "Your Highnesses, I couldn't sleep after the feast. I was walking the corridors, trying to clear my head from too much wine." Isabella leans forward. "And what did you see?" "I was near the king's chambers when I heard voices, whispered voices. Then I saw a figure leaving the room, but it wasn't Captain William. Richard's pulse quickens, but his voice remains calm. How can you be certain? The person was taller, moved differently. William has that slight limp from his old war wound. This person moved gracefully. Isabella and Richard exchange a subtle glance. The description could fit either of them. Did you see the person's face? Isabella asks. No, Your Majesty, too dark, but... Thomas hesitates. But what? Richard presses. I heard something drop. When I investigated this morning, I found this. Thomas produces a small golden button, ornate, expensive, clearly from a noble's garment. Both Isabella and Richard recognize it immediately, though they show no reaction. It's from Richard's doublet, the one he wore during the murder. Where exactly did you find this? Richard asks, his voice deadly quiet. Right outside the king's chamber door. Isabella stands gracefully. Lord Thomas, this is very serious. If there was indeed another person involved, we must investigate thoroughly. Of course, Your Majesty. Richard moves closer to Thomas. Tell me, who else have you shared this information with? No one, Your Highness. I came straight to you. Good, very good. Richard places a fatherly hand on the young man's shoulder. Thomas, I'm going to ask you to keep this between us for now. If word spreads that we doubt Captain William's guilt, it could cause panic. I understand, Your Highness. Excellent. Now, I suggest you return to your chambers and get some rest. This has been traumatic for all of us. After Thomas leaves, Isabella closes the door and turns to Richard. He has to die. I know. That button could link you directly to the murder. And if he starts asking questions, talking to others, Richard runs his hand through his hair. It's just one witness. We can handle one witness. Like we handled Edward. The comparison hangs in the air like poison. Killing the king was one thing. He was their obstacle, their enemy in their minds. But Thomas is an innocent boy whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There might be another way, Isabella says slowly. What do you mean? What if Thomas had an accident, fell from the battlements during a midnight walk? Young men do foolish things when they're grieving. Richard stares at her. You're talking about murdering a child. I'm talking about protecting us, about protecting what we've built. The conversation is interrupted by screams from the courtyard. They rush to the window and see Captain William being dragged to a wooden frame. The torture has escalated to public display. Confess, Bruno shouts. Confess and end your suffering. William, broken and bloody, still manages to gasp. I am innocent. Isabella watches the scene with growing horror. Look what we've done to him. We've done what was necessary, Richard replies, but his voice lacks conviction. Have we? Because now we're planning to kill a boy to cover up killing a good man, to cover up killing your brother. Richard grabs her shoulders. Are you having regrets, Isabella, because it's too late for regrets? She looks into his eyes and sees something that chills her. The same cold calculation she saw when he drove the dagger into Edward's heart. No regrets, she whispers, just clarity. Below in the courtyard, William finally loses consciousness from the pain. And somewhere in the castle, Lord Thomas examines the golden button, wondering if he should have mentioned the second thing he found, a woman's earring, dropped near the same spot. That night, Lord Thomas cannot sleep. The golden button sits on his bedside table, catching moonlight from his chamber window. Something about the whole situation feels wrong. Too convenient, too neat. He decides to investigate further. Wrapping a cloak around his shoulders, he makes his way through the dark corridors toward the king's chambers, now sealed and guarded. But he's not alone in the darkness. Richard follows at a distance, a dagger concealed in his robes. He's made his decision. Thomas must die tonight before he can share his suspicions with anyone else. Thomas reaches the sealed chamber and examines the doorframe more carefully. In the dim torchlight, he spots something the guards missed during their initial investigation. Scratches in the wood, as if someone forced the lock from the outside. Interesting discovery, Lord Thomas. Thomas spins around to find Richard emerging from the shadows, his face unreadable in the flickering light. "Your Highness, I didn't hear you approach. I couldn't sleep either. The king's death haunts us all." Richard moves closer. "What brings you here so late?" Thomas holds up the button. "I keep thinking about this, about what I saw. Something doesn't feel right about Captain William being the killer." "Oh? And what feels wrong?" "William loved the king. Everyone knew it. He saved His Majesty's life twice in battle. Why would he suddenly turn traitor?" Richard's hand moves to the dagger hidden in his robes. Men change, Thomas. Greed, ambition. Perhaps he was promised something. By whom? Who would make such a promise? The question hangs in the air. Richard realizes the boy is sharper than he appears, and more dangerous. "Thomas, you're young. You don't understand how complex these political matters can be." "I understand betrayal when I see it, Your Highness." The words hit Richard like a physical blow. Does Thomas suspect him? What exactly are you implying? Thomas takes a step backward, suddenly sensing danger. "Nothing, Your Highness. I just think we should investigate further before we execute William. The investigation is complete. William is guilty. But what if he's not?" Richard draws the dagger in one smooth motion. "Then innocent men sometimes die for the greater good." Thomas's eyes widen in terror. "Your Highness, what are you doing? What I have to do?" But as Richard lunges forward, Thomas proves quicker than expected. He dodges and runs, shouting for help. His cries echo through the corridors, waking servants and guards. Richard curses and gives chase, but it's too late. Too many people are stirring, too many witnesses now awake. Thomas reaches the main hall, where several guards intercept him. "Help me!" he gasps. "Prince Richard just tried to kill me." The guards look confused, looking between Thomas and Richard, who appears in the doorway trying to look composed. "The boy is hysterical," Richard says calmly. "Grief has affected his mind. I found him trying to break into the king's sealed chamber." "That's a lie," Thomas shouts. "He had a dagger. He said innocent men sometimes have to die." More people arrive. Servants, minor nobles, even Queen Isabella in her nightgown. "What's happening?" she demands. Richard thinks quickly. Lord Thomas has had some kind of breakdown. He's making wild accusations. Perhaps the trauma of discovering evidence about the king's murder has unhinged him. Thomas looks around desperately. "Please, you have to listen to me. I found proof that someone else was in the king's chamber that night. And when I told Prince Richard, he tried to silence me." Isabella studies the scene carefully. "Thomas, you're clearly distressed. Perhaps you should rest." "I'm not mad. I have evidence." He pulls out the golden button. "This doesn't belong to Captain William. And there's more. I found an earring too. A woman's earring." The crowd murmurs. This is new information. Isabella's blood freezes. Her earring, the one she thought she'd lost in her own chambers. Richard sees only one option left. Guards. Lord Thomas is clearly unwell. Take him to his chambers under protective custody until a physician can examine him. As the guards move to comply, Thomas shouts, "The button has an inscription. Check it. See whose family crest it bears." Before anyone can examine the button more closely, Richard steps forward and takes it. "I'll handle this evidence personally." But Thomas has said enough. Seeds of doubt are planted, and in a castle full of ambitious nobles, doubt grows quickly into suspicion. The next morning, whispers spread through the castle like wildfire. Lord Thomas's accusations have reached every corner, every servant, every noble. The once certain narrative of Captain William's guilt is cracking. In the Queen's chambers, Isabella paces frantically while Richard stands by the window, watching the courtyard where a crowd has gathered. "They're demanding to see the evidence Thomas mentioned," Richard reports grimly. "The button, the earring." "Where is the earring?" Isabella asks. "I searched Thomas's room after the guards took him. I couldn't find it." "Then he still has it, hidden somewhere." Richard turns from the window. "Or he gave it to someone else before last night." The possibility chills them both. If Thomas was smart enough to hide evidence. A knock interrupts their conversation. Sir Marcus enters, his expression troubled. "Your Highnesses, I bring disturbing news. Several servants have come forward with observations." Isabella's heart sinks. What kind of observations? Strange things they noticed, but didn't think important until now. "Mary, the chambermaid, says she saw you, Your Majesty, entering the king's chambers very late on the night of the murder." "I often visited my husband's chambers," Isabella replies carefully. "Surely that's not suspicious." "She says you left again within minutes, looking distressed." Richard steps forward. "Sir Marcus, surely you don't believe servant gossip over—" "There's more," Marcus continues. "The kitchen boy saw Prince Richard near the wine cellars that night, selecting a specific bottle. The same wine found in Captain William's possession. The evidence is mounting." Richard forces himself to remain calm. "I often select wine for state dinners. This proves nothing. Perhaps not individually, but together with Lord Thomas's claims." Marcus pulls out a small object, the golden button. "I examined this more closely. It bears the crest of House Blackwood. Your house, Prince Richard." The room falls silent. Richard's mind races for an explanation. "Hundreds of garments bear that crest. My servants, my guards, gifts I've given, true, but this button is made of the finest gold, with intricate craftsmanship, only worn by nobility." Isabella realizes they're losing control. "Sir Marcus, what exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we delay Captain William's execution until we can investigate these new claims properly." "Absolutely not," Richard snaps. "William is guilty. These accusations are desperate attempts to avoid the obvious truth." But Marcus stands firm. "Your Highness, if there's even a possibility of his innocence, we cannot execute him. The Crown's justice must be beyond question." After Marcus leaves, Isabella collapses into a chair. "It's falling apart, Richard. Everything is falling apart." "Not yet. We still have options." "What options?" "Half the castle suspects us now." Richard begins pacing. "We blame Thomas. Say he's trying to deflect suspicion from himself, make him the new suspect. The evidence points to us, not him. Evidence can be adjusted." Isabella stares at him. "You want to plant evidence against Thomas?" "I want to survive this." "Don't you?" Before she can answer, screaming erupts from the courtyard. They rush to the window and see chaos below. Captain William, being transported to the execution platform, has broken free from his guards. Bloodied and barely conscious, he's shouting something that carries clearly through the morning air. "The wine! Check the wine! Someone drugged me with mandrake root. I remember now." Guards tackle him, but the damage is done. The crowd heard every word. "Mandrake root," Isabella whispers. "That's what we used to knock him unconscious." How could he remember? The dosage should have wiped his memory completely. Maybe it's wearing off. Maybe the torture cleared his head. They watch in horror as William continues shouting, "I remember a woman's voice. A woman was there when I drank the wine." The crowd is getting agitated. Some are demanding William be allowed to speak freely. Others want the execution to proceed immediately. Richard makes a desperate decision. "I'm going down there. I'll order his immediate execution before he can say anything else." "Richard, if you silence him now, in front of everyone, it will look like justice. Nothing more." But as Richard storms toward the door, Isabella realizes something that freezes her blood. If Richard is willing to kill William in broad daylight to protect their secret, what will he do to her if she ever becomes a liability? Richard strides into the courtyard with royal authority, but the crowd is hostile. Nobles and commoners alike press closer to the execution platform, demanding answers. "People of the realm," Richard shouts over the noise. "Justice will not be delayed by the desperate ravings of a condemned traitor." But Captain William, though beaten and bloodied, finds strength from somewhere deep within. "My lord, I served your brother faithfully for 15 years. Let me speak the truth before I die." The crowd roars approval. Richard realizes he's lost control of the situation. Lord Aldwyn steps forward. "Your Highness, by ancient law, A condemned man has the right to final words before execution. Richard's jaw clenches. He's had plenty of opportunity to confess. His time is finished. I confess nothing because I did nothing, William shouts. But I remember now, the woman who brought me wine that night. She wore jasmine perfume, spoke softly, told me the king requested my presence. Isabella, watching from the castle window, touches her throat where she always applies jasmine oil. The crowd is listening intently to every word. William continues, I remember drinking the wine, feeling dizzy, then nothing until I woke covered in blood. Someone used me as their weapon. Sir Marcus approaches the platform. Captain, if you're innocent, who do you believe killed the king? Someone who had access to the royal chambers, someone who knew the king's routines, someone who could drug a guard captain without suspicion. The implications hang in the air like smoke. The crowd begins looking toward the castle windows, where they can see Richard in the courtyard and Isabella silhouetted above. Richard signals to the executioner, enough, proceed with the sentence. But the executioner hesitates. My lord, the people want to hear. The people will hear what I tell them to hear. Do your duty. The executioner raises his axe, but William's voice cuts through the morning air one final time. The real killers stand among you. Look for the jasmine scent. Look for the golden button. Look for those who benefit most from my king's death. The axe falls. William's body goes limp, but his words echo through the stunned crowd. The execution that was supposed to end all questions has only raised more. Richard addresses the gathering. You have witnessed justice. The king's murderer has paid for his crime. But the crowd doesn't disperse. Murmurs grow louder, more agitated. Someone shouts, what about the button? What about the jasmine? Another voice, who benefits most from the king's death? The questions Richard hoped to silence are multiplying. He retreats toward the castle, but not before catching the eye of Lord Aldwyn, whose expression has turned from respect to suspicion. In her chambers, Isabella watches the crowd from her window. They're not leaving. They're organizing. Small groups huddle together, pointing toward the castle, clearly discussing what they've heard. When Richard returns, his face is pale with rage and fear. It's done. William is dead. But the damage isn't. Did you see the crowd's faces? They believe him. They'll forget. People always forget. Will they? Because I just saw Dame Margaret talking to 3 kitchen servants, and Lord Aldwyn is deep in conversation with Sir Marcus. Richard moves to the window. So what do you suggest? That we confess, throw ourselves on the mercy of people who just watched us execute an innocent man? Maybe there's another way. What way? Isabella's voice is barely a whisper. What if the Queen was also a victim? What if she discovered the plot too late, tried to save the king, but was overcome by the real killer? Richard stares at her. You want to blame me? Make me the sole murderer. I want us to survive. One of us confessing might save the other. After everything we've done together, after everything we've shared. What we've shared is guilt, Richard. And guilt is a poison that eventually kills everything it touches. Through the window, they can see torches being lit in the courtyard despite the daylight. The crowd isn't dispersing. It's growing. They're going to storm the castle, Isabella realizes. Then we fight them. With what army? Half the guards probably believe William was innocent now. A new sound reaches them, the castle's main gates opening, not being forced open, but opened from within. Someone's letting them in, Richard says quietly. Isabella grabs his arm. Richard, I think our time is up. Heavy footsteps echo in the corridor outside their chamber. Not running footsteps, but determined, purposeful steps. The steps of people who've made a decision. The door opens without a knock, and Lord Aldwyn enters with 6 armed men behind him. Your Highnesses, he says formally, by order of the realm's justice, you are both under arrest for the murder of King Edward. Richard's hand goes immediately to his sword. You dare accuse the royal family of treason? Lord Aldwyn stands firm. The evidence is overwhelming, Your Highness. The button, the jasmine perfume, Captain William's testimony before his death. Most damning of all, Lord Thomas produced the earring he found. It belongs to Queen Isabella. Isabella's face goes white. That's impossible. I lost that earring weeks ago. In the king's chambers, apparently. Aldwin signals to his men. Please surrender peacefully. You are outnumbered. Richard draws his sword. I am regent of this realm. You have no authority to arrest me. Your regency dies with your treason, Prince Richard. The armed men spread out, surrounding the royal couple. But Richard and Isabella position themselves back to back, a final partnership forged in desperation. Isabella, Richard whispers, stay close to me. Always, she replies, drawing a dagger from her robes. The first guard lunges at Richard, who parries expertly. These are skilled swordsmen, but Richard is a trained knight. He cuts down two attackers before the others can react. Isabella proves surprisingly deadly with her dagger, slashing at anyone who comes too close. The lovers fight with the fury of people who have nothing left to lose, but they're still outnumbered. More guards pour through the door, and Richard takes a sword cut across his arm. "The window!" Isabella shouts. They back toward the large window overlooking the courtyard, 3 stories down, but perhaps survivable, into the moat. "Your Highnesses," Aldwin calls out, "surrender now and face trial. Continue fighting and die as traitors." Richard looks at Isabella, blood running down his arm. "What do you choose, my love? Trial or freedom?" "With you, always freedom." They clasp hands, ready to leap together when Sir Marcus appears in the doorway with devastating news. "Your Highnesses, before you jump to your deaths, you should know. Lord Thomas survived the night. He's told us everything." Richard freezes. "Thomas is dead. I killed him myself." "You tried to kill him." "He escaped through a secret passage in his chamber wall. He's been hiding, gathering evidence, talking to witnesses." Isabella's grip on Richard's hand tightens. "What evidence?" "The servant who helped you drug Captain William's wine. The stable boy who saw you both leaving the castle separately that night, then returning together. The physician who sold you mandrake root 3 days before the murder." Each revelation hits like a physical blow. Their perfect plan is completely unraveled. "Most importantly," Marcus continues, "Thomas heard your conversation last night. When Prince Richard tried to kill him, he heard everything through the door before you noticed him. Your confession to each other, your plans to blame others, your relationship." The word hangs in the air like a death sentence. Adultery and regicide, both capital crimes. Richard's sword wavers. "You have only the word of a frightened boy, and a dozen corroborating witnesses, and physical evidence. And the fact that you just killed 2 guards trying to arrest you." Isabella realizes their situation is hopeless. "Richard, perhaps we should—" "No." His voice turns cold. "If we're going to die, let's take some of them with us." But instead of attacking the guards, Richard spins toward Isabella, his sword rising toward her throat. "If I can't have you, no one can." Isabella's eyes widen in shock. "Richard, what are you doing?" "Ending this on my terms. The man she loved, the man she killed for, is about to murder her to prevent her from testifying against him." "You're insane," she whispers. "I'm practical. Dead wives can't betray their husbands." The sword moves toward her neck, but Isabella is faster. Her dagger finds his ribs before his blade reaches her throat. Richard staggers, looking down at the growing blood stain. You stabbed me, just like we stabbed Edward." He collapses to his knees, and the guards quickly disarm both of them. As Richard bleeds on the stone floor, he looks up at Isabella with dying eyes. "I loved you." "No," she replies quietly. "You loved power. I was just the path to it." 3 days later, Queen Isabella stands in chains before the assembled lords of the realm. The great hall is packed with nobles, commoners, and foreign dignitaries who've come to witness the trial of a queen. Prince Richard died from his wound, taking his secrets to the grave, but Isabella lives to face judgment alone. Lord Aldwin, now serving as chief magistrate, reads the charges. Isabella of House Montclair, you stand accused of regicide, adultery, conspiracy, and the murder of an innocent man through false testimony. She stands straight despite her chains, maintaining what dignity she can. I understand the charges. How do you plead? Isabella looks around the hall, at faces that once bowed to her, now filled with disgust and condemnation. Lord Thomas sits in the front row, alive but bearing the scars of Richard's attack. Guilty, she says simply. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Many expected denials, pleas for mercy, desperate lies. You confess to murdering King Edward? I do. And to framing Captain William for your crime? Her voice cracks slightly. I do. And to conspiracy with Prince Richard in all these acts? Yes. Lord Aldwyn seems surprised by her honesty. Your Majesty, do you wish to explain your motives? To ask for the court's mercy? Isabella considers the question carefully. What mercy did we show William when he screamed his innocence? What mercy did we show Edward when we drove steel into his heart while he slept? The hall falls silent. I loved Prince Richard, or thought I did. But love that requires murder isn't love, it's madness. We told ourselves we were freeing the kingdom from a weak ruler, but we were only freeing ourselves from inconvenience. She looks directly at Lord Thomas. This young man nearly died because he had the courage to speak truth. Captain William did die because we were cowards who chose the easy evil over the hard right. Tears begin flowing down her face. I have no excuse for what we did. No justification that doesn't sound hollow in my own ears. We were selfish, cruel, and we destroyed good people for our own desires. The magistrate asks, do you have any final words before sentence is pronounced? Isabella nods. To William's family, if they're listening, he died a hero's death defending a truth we tried to bury. To Lord Thomas, your courage saved this kingdom from being ruled by murderers. And to the people of this realm, choose your leaders more carefully than you chose us. Lord Aldwyn stands. Isabella of House Montclair, former queen of this realm, you are sentenced to death by execution. However, in recognition of your complete confession and apparent remorse, the court offers you a choice, the headsman's axe, quick and clean, or... He pauses. Or what, my lord? Exiled to the northern monasteries, to spend your remaining years in penance and prayer. A living death, but life nonetheless. The crowd erupts in debate. Some shout for blood, others for mercy. Isabella closes her eyes, thinking of Edward's face in his final moments, of William's broken body on the scaffold, of Richard's dying words about love and power. I choose the axe, she says quietly. The hall goes silent again. Your Majesty? Aldwyn asks. Are you certain? Exile would allow you to live, to perhaps find redemption. My lord, some crimes are too great for redemption, some guilt too heavy for life to bear. Edward was a good king, and William was a loyal man. They deserved better than us. She straightens her shoulders. Let my death be clean and swift, and let it serve as warning to any who think love justifies murder, or that passion excuses betrayal. The sentence is set for dawn. That night, alone in her cell, Isabella writes her final letters. Apologies to families destroyed by her choices, confessions of crimes still undiscovered, and a detailed account of everything that led to this moment. In her last letter, addressed to no one in particular, she writes, "We thought we were writing a love story. Instead, we wrote a tragedy. The difference is that love stories end with union. Tragedy ends with truth." As the sun rises over the kingdom, Isabella walks to the scaffold with steady steps. The crowd is silent, watching a queen die for her crimes. Her final words are simple, "Forgive us our trespasses." The axe falls, and the royal bedchamber betrayal finally ends. But in the castle archives, her letters remain as testimony to how quickly love can become hate, how easily justice becomes vengeance, and how the greatest tragedies begin with people who believe their desires justify any cost. The throne passes to Edward's distant cousin, a man who rules with the wisdom that comes from witnessing the price of corruption. and Captain William is honored posthumously as a hero, the man who died for truth and was vindicated by it. In the end, Isabella learned the hardest truth of all. There's a difference between love and obsession, between passion and destruction, between wanting someone and deserving them. When she and Richard first plotted Edward's murder, they told themselves it was about love, conquering all obstacles. But love doesn't require victims. Love doesn't demand innocent blood. What they felt wasn't love. It was selfishness, dressed up in romantic words. The most chilling moment wasn't when they killed Edward, or even when they watched William die for their crime. It was when Richard turned his sword on Isabella at the end. Because that revealed what he'd always been, not a lover but a user, someone who saw people as tools for his ambition, including the woman he claimed to adore. Isabella's final choice, the axe over exile, was perhaps her first truly honorable decision. She finally understood that some guilt is too heavy for life to carry, that some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness, even self-forgiveness. But here's what makes this story truly tragic. Edward wasn't a tyrant who deserved to die. William wasn't a corrupt guard who deserved to suffer. They were just good men who stood in the way of two people who wanted what they wanted, when they wanted it. The real poison in this story wasn't the mandrake root they used to drug William. It was the toxic belief that their desires mattered more than other people's lives, that their happiness justified any cost paid by others. And perhaps that's the most important lesson. When we start viewing other people as obstacles to our dreams, rather than human beings with their own rights to life and happiness, we've already crossed the line from protagonist to villain. This makes us ask some uncomfortable questions. How many times have we sacrificed someone else's well-being for our own convenience, telling ourselves it was justified? When we want something desperately, how do we know the difference between fighting for it and destroying for it? And when someone we love asks us to do something that hurts innocent people, is that really love or manipulation? The truth is, real love makes us better people. It inspires us to be more generous, more honest, more protective of others' well-being. If what we call love makes us cruel, selfish, or willing to harm innocents, then we're not experiencing love. We're experiencing something much darker. Isabella and Richard thought they were the heroes of their own love story. They ended up as the villains in everyone else's. If this story resonated with you, if you believe that true love elevates rather than corrupts, subscribe for more medieval tales that explore the thin line between passion and destruction, between love and obsession. Because in the end, the greatest romance isn't about getting what you want, it's about becoming someone worthy of what you already have.